Hey, and welcome back. We're taking a look at chapter 4.4.3. We're going to talk about how to graph if we have an intercept form quadratic. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our intercept form and we're going to find our x-intercept. So we're actually going to solve this. We're not going to worry about our a value for that. I'm just going to take each factor, like x minus 3 and x minus 5, set each one equal to 0, and solve. So I get x equals 3 and x equals 5. Those are my two x-intercepts. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use kind of a sneaky idea here. And here's the idea. Here's why it works. If I know I have an x-intercept at 3 and I have an x-intercept at 5, they have to have the same y value, which means that those 2 points are going to be the same distance from the axis of symmetry. So I actually am going to find my axis of symmetry and use that to find the x value of my vertex. So to do that, all we're going to do is we're going to take these two values and average them. And that sounds worse than it is, because all we do is we take 3, in this case, one x value, plus the other one, and divide by 2. So I take 3 plus 5, those are my solutions, I add them up, divide by 2. I'm going to split the difference. So in this case, I get 8 over 2, which is 4. Now, we know that the axis of symmetry goes through the line x equals 4. What we don't know is where exactly is our vertex? Is it above? Is it below? We're not quite sure yet. So what we can do is we can substitute in that x value of 4 and evaluate to see what the y value has to be. So all I do is replace x with the value, the x value of the axis of symmetry. And I'm going to evaluate. So I get 4 minus 3 is 1. 4 minus 5 is negative 1. I'm going to keep that a value. And 2 times 1 times negative 1 gives me my y value of 2. So we kind of plotted our intercepts, found exactly what's in the middle, and then we took that x value and plugged it back in to figure out where the vertex has to be. Kind of clever. So once I know that, I can plot my vertex, and it's going to be at 4, 2. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right, and 1, 2 up, plot my vertex. Now my x-intercepts we actually found early, so I plot those, and then I connect the 3 dots to make my parabola. So take a moment, try this on your own. Pause the video, and when you're ready, unpause it, and we'll go through them together. So first thing I'm going to do, take each factor, set it equal to 0, and then I'm going to solve. So I subtract 1 from both sides, I get x equals negative 1. I add 1 to both sides for the right factor, and I get x equals 1. Now I'm going to add those two values up, negative 1 and 1. I'm going to put them on top of a fraction over 2, and I just add them together. So negative 1 plus 1 is 0 over 2. So right in the middle, between negative 1 and 1, is 0. Yeah, sure enough. Now if I substitute those values, if I substitute that x value of 0, which is my axis of symmetry, back in, I can evaluate and figure out what y equals. So I get 0 plus 1 is 1, 0 minus 1 is negative 1, times my a value, which is 2. So I take 2 times 1, get 2 times negative 1, and I get negative 2. So now I can plot this, and I can say my vertex is going to be at the point 0, comma, negative 2. And I plot that on my graph, and then I plot the intercepts that I had, negative 1 and x equals positive 1. And then I connect them to make the graph. So let's try with another example here. I'm going to set x plus 4 equal to 0 and x plus 2 equal to 0. And I get x equals negative 4 and x equals negative 2. I'm going to add -4 and -2 up, and I get -6, and then I'm going to average it. I'm going to split it between those 2 points, and so I find the axis of symmetry is at x equals -3. So I substitute that -3 in back where x was in the original. Now I just calculate to evaluate what y has to be. So I take -3 plus 4, I get 1. I take -3 plus 2, I get -1. And now I multiply -1 times 1 times -1. That's a whole lot of ones, but it comes out to a positive 1. So I know my vertex is going to be at -3, 1. So I go 1, 2, 3, and up 1. And then I just plot my x-intercepts there with those green dots. Let's try it with a fraction. It's a little bit trickier. I add 1 to both sides, and I get x equals 1. And in the right factor, I set it equal to 0, and I add 5 to both sides, and I get x equals 5. I take 1 and 5, add them together, and I get 6. Divide by 2, and I get 3. Substitute in that x value back in for x, and I get 3 minus 1 is 2, and 3 minus 5 is -2. And so I take, and I can multiply these all together. I'm going to save this one for last. And so I take, the order really doesn't matter, but I take 2 times -2, get -4, and 1/2 times -4 is just -2. So now I can plot my vertex at 3, -2, and my y-intercepts at +1 and +5, and connect the shape, connect the parabola. Last, I get x equals -1 and x equals 3. Average them up, I get -4 over 2, which is -2. Substitute in that -2 where x used to be, and I get -2 plus 1 times -2 plus 3, still times 3 equals y. So I get 3 times -1 plus 1 gives me 3 times -1, which is just -3. So I can plot -2, -3 is my vertex. My x-intercepts are -1, -3. And then I can sketch my shape. If you've got any questions, let me know. And if not, we'll see you in the next video.